We've already recognized that the Bible uses different forms or genres of language. There are historical narratives, laws, songs, letters, and we will consider these separately later in our studies together, as we must learn how to best interpret these different forms of writing in the Bible. However, some basic points are shared among most of the different forms of writing, and so we'll look at some of these first of all. The first and most important point is that we will always want to begin by asking the question, what did the original writer intend us to understand when he or she completed the task of writing their book? This has to be our starting point. How then can we best achieve this? For many of us, this is very difficult as we do not have the resources available to us that offer the best help. However, we must always do the best we can and leave the rest to God. Here are some things we need to watch out for. We've already seen that the printed Hebrew and Greek Bibles are as close to the original manuscripts as it is possible to get. However, occasionally we will discover, perhaps by comparing different versions of the Bible, that there is some uncertainty as to what was originally written down or how it should be translated. This should not greatly trouble us, but it may explain differences between the Bible translations we use. We also need to be alert to how we use words. As we've already noticed, words usually have a range of meanings. Several factors determine exactly what we or the authors of a Bible book are actually trying to say at any one point in time. Here are some of the most frequent encountered dangers in interpreting the Bible. First, we can assume that a word's meaning is determined by the history and the structure of a word. Monogenes is a classic example. Many older Bible versions translate John chapter 1 verse 14 in this way. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten, the monogenes, of the Father, full of grace and truth. So it's assumed that the word is a compound of monos only and genao, to beget. And while this may be theologically true, its usage in New Testament times shows that it has lost the sense of only begotten and means unique, one and only, as most recent versions recognize. Secondly, because some words in modern languages are derived from words used at the time that the Bible was written, we can assume that they mean the same thing now as they did then. In Romans chapter 1 verse 16, the Apostle Paul refers to the gospel as the power or the dunamis of God that brings salvation. The word dynamite is derived from dunamis, and Bible teachers sometimes refer to the dynamite of the gospel. However, dynamite is destructive, whereas Paul has in mind something constructive. It brings salvation. The word has actually changed its meaning in different languages. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9 verse 7 we read that the Lord loves a cheerful or a hilarion giver. And some teachers have noticed that the English word hilarity is derived from hilarion, and some preachers have drawn some absurd conclusions from this. So we need to watch out. Thirdly, when we speak conversationally with one another, we rarely use words in a specific or technical sense, not unless we clearly intend to. What we mean is determined by the whole context in which we are speaking. Sometimes Christians have assumed a common meaning between authors when it's not there, as for example, the different uses of justification in Paul and James. Or we impose one meaning on all occurrences of a word, for example, apostle, and make a nonsense of the scriptures. Careful study makes it clear that Paul and James were addressing different issues when speaking about justification. And it's equally clear that the word apostle, or one sent, was used by the New Testament writers in several different ways. And we will return to this point later. Fourthly, we need to be wary of selective, or what I call prejudicial, use of the evidence. So we can sometimes appeal only to the passages which seem to support a truth we cherish, and or ignore or reinterpret passages which don't suit our theory or belief. I think some Calvinists and Arminians are frequently guilty of handling scriptures such as John 3:16 and Romans 8:29 in precisely such a way. Then again, we can sometimes either restrict the possible meaning of a word or phrase or extend it in a highly unlikely way. In Matthew chapter 26 verse 26, Jesus says of the bread at the Passover meal he shared with his disciples, "This is my body." Many Christians have insisted that this must mean this bread is equivalent to, is actually my body. But the verb to be is often used to express resemblance. This is like my body. An example of extending a meaning might be ecclesia in Acts chapter 99 verse 31, which is expanded to mean more than the context actually seems to require, and is seen as justification for either a Presbyterian or an Episcopal form of church government. Two further observations. Beware of the choice of similar or identical words used by translators of both the Old and the New Testament. All too easily, Hebrew meanings are read into Greek words or Greek meanings into Hebrew words. And we have to be careful of such procedures, since the range of meanings of words in different languages, as we've already seen, is seldom precisely the same. And this is true of the Bible languages too. Finally, the most important point is this: words gain their specific meaning in their context. The context, not the word, defines the precise meaning of a statement and of the words within it. We only have to spend a few minutes thinking about this to see that this is true when we speak. So we need to apply the same understanding to the reading of the Bible. It follows from the last point that when we read a specific verse or passage, we need to read within the context of the book as a whole. We're all familiar with the way that our current world is dominated by sound bites. A few words can be taken from someone's statement and often used to say or imply something very different from what the speaker intended. And we must not do this when we read the Bible. So we will try to ascertain the natural divisions of the passage before us, to uncover its structure and form, to relate it to its context within the book being studied, and even its place within the overall structure of the Bible. As we will see, Hebrew poetry has very distinctive features, notably its parallelism. Prophecy also reveals a number of formal features. Hebrew narrative includes many regularly recurring characteristics, and we will find our understanding of the Bible increases when we recognize these things. This is, of course, why we are studying these things together. So far, I've concentrated on asking the question, what did the original speaker mean? This has to be deliberate. Only when we have done this can we discover the significance of our text to ourselves today. Especially in our earlier studies together that follow, I will try to help us answer the question, what did the writer of the Bible say? However, as we continue in our studies, we will of course want to know what God is saying today in the scriptures that we read. And we'll want to discover how we can better share this with others.